Hey, welcome back to the show, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got some Pantera to get through today. Dimebag had the heaviest, coolest, most badass riffs known to man, but his tone was so brutal, it was so full of attitude, and it just matched that music. And I've got a soft spot for them. The nostalgia growing up as a teenager, they were badasses. And anyway, we just get into it. So the way that I see it, the core that made Dime's tone so unique is in the very front end of the amp. He had the MXR 6-band EQ. He had the old ocean blue coloured one, but I've got the black one, and I think they're silver now, and the tone is pretty much the same throughout. But in the effects loop, he ran his Furman PQ3 or PQ4 parametric EQ. And parametric EQs, or all EQs for that matter, have their own personality, their own flavour that just shines through. Even though they adjust different frequencies, every EQ has its own temperament and the way that it reacts with amps and the way that gain is added and frequencies that are pushed, so they will sound different. And the Master Effects EQ from Hell that I'll be using today is modelled off the Furman PQ3. So we'll just see how it actually ties in with Dime's tone, and we'll just have a fiddle around and go through the discography of his work and just see the differences between the albums, I suppose. So very quickly, the way I've got things set up in here, I'm running through the 5150 6L6 50 watt version. It's unmodified, it's absolutely stock. I'm running the blue channel, and all the settings on this are pretty much just straight down the middle. There's nothing, I haven't set it in any special way. This is really just a video to show you the power of the EQs and just to work with those. The gain's backed off a little bit. And to capture the speaker cabinet, we're running through the Two-Notes Torpedo Captor X, which is a really awesome piece of gear that emulates a speaker and microphone setup. And it's being captured in a studio somewhere, and it's got built-in IRs, and pretty much it's software that just, you can move around a virtual microphone in the app and set it up exactly the way that you want and for your sound to get captured. So I can sit in here totally silent and play my amp and it sounds real, it sounds awesome. So that's connected straight to my audio interface. I've got my Washburn copy guitar. This isn't an actual real Washburn, I could not afford one, but I found this secondhand. It's got quality parts, it's been built really well, but it's not an original. It's got the Floyd Rose 1000 on it. It's got the actual Seymour Duncan dime bucket in the bridge and an SH1 in the neck. And look, it's built really well. It's mahogany. It sounds awesome. It looks badass. It's good enough for me. And then for the pedal board, I'm running the Boss NS2 in the 4 cable method. It looks really weird, but trust me, it works. It sounds really good like that. And then in the front end of the amp, I've got the MXR 6-band. These are both in the front end of the amp, but we're not going to be using them today. And up the top here, this is everything that I've running through the effects loop, but we're only going to be using the Master Effects EQ from Hell. So without further ado, this is just my guitar and just the amp, and no effects added apart from the noise gate. That's very basic. That's just a foundation tone. There's nothing special about that. And what I'll do now is just kick on the MXR 6-band in the front end, and you'll hear it's a little bit more machine gunny. It's got that sort of those mids pushed to make it sound more like a wah pedal you can hear. We'll boost that up even more. And that's sort of what Dime did, just to drive that front end of the tone. And the RGs were really renowned to be like a flabby loose end, and he wound off the bass there and just pushed the mids and sharpened up that high attack. And so it really just made the input for his guitar just have that real aggressive sort of tightened up attack. And the MXR 6-band is just absolutely perfect for that. And so that's pretty much the front end of the amp for that tone. You can really just like push those frequencies if you want just a little bit more in the center, like bring them up to here and boost the lows a little bit, but I pretty much just keep the curve the same. It's just up and down in those mid few frequencies. And that tone's really void of any like solid bottom end or any sort of, it's not a nice sounding tone, but really you're just setting up the front end of the amp so you can add those frequencies later. So at a glance, the parametric EQs, they look sort of intimidating and you don't know where to start building your tone with it. But essentially across the top here, you've just got the gains of each of the curves for the bass, mid and high frequencies. The actual frequency here, this is going to actually move the curve in the bass range. It's going to move the curve forward and aft. And down at the bottom here, you've got the bandwidth for each, and the bandwidth is actually the cue, so you're just going to narrow or widen the actual arc of the curve. So I think the album that we'll try and start off with is The Great Southern Trendkill. It's a really heavy and brutal album, but the guitar tone itself was probably the most generic out of all the albums. So it had, I'd say it had a fat bottom end. And as you move each of the banks and you try and dial these in, they will affect each other. It's really, it is an EQ that you've really got to spend time with and just dial in. And it's I find the mid frequency dial here, this is a really, this changes it a lot. And then the high band here, this is the one that really makes the tones what they are. This is what stands out. Maybe a little bit more mids there. But you can hear it really, you've got to open up that top end without making it scratchy. That fattens up the bottom. That's actually pretty close. It's always hard too if you don't A and B it with the record as you go, but maybe just add a little bit more mids there. I didn't think I'd get it so quickly. I'm sort of happy with that. I think we're pushing the front end just a little bit too hard with this tone. There's too much sort of... So I might just wind back the 6-band just a little bit. Make it a bit more mellow. That's pretty close, I think, for like a Trendkill style tone. There's not a lot going on. It's just a fat sort of sound. It's got a great... I really like that tone. I think it's got a lot of meat and it'd go really well in a band scenario. Like you're not going to sound really hollow. And if Dom was playing a live set, I think that's more of a tone that he would gravitate to, because it's not so scooped, and you'll get it to actually carry a little bit more and push through the mix. So from here, I think we'll try and look at like Reinventing the Steel. And to me, that album, those chugs that he had, I think he had actually more mid frequencies pushed there, just to give it, that really had more of like a wah-y sort of. So I'll bring those up, not a lot, but just a little. And I think the top end of the tone on Reinventing the Steel, I think it was a little bit less abrasive in the highs, and it was a bit more sort of felted. And maybe the bass could have been slightly thicker. I find once I'm happy with the bass, I can sort of set it and forget and just tune it in to suit each of the albums. But really a cross between the mids and the highs here, especially the highs. You can hear, as I brought that bandwidth around, it sort of, it made the highs a little bit more filtered sounding, like it's more open, like the blanket's off there. It's a nice warm high, but it's I think that's a really cool steel tone. A little bit more mids. we're going to have to move on, but I think at the same time we've got to skip Cowboys from Hell because this guitar is tuned down to D, or 425 Hertz D, which is like halfway between C sharp and D. That's how I'm tuned. It's like you just tune to 425 and either D standard tuning in D or standard tuning in E, and that'll pretty much get you most of the tunings for Pantera. But we got to skip Cowboys from Hell. That's a fantastic tone on that album. I really like it. And we'll definitely do it another day, but for today we'll just go next. We'll try and get a Vulgar display of power. And this album, this is the most attitudey Pantera album I've ever listened to. And I think the way that I hear it, I think it's the most extreme guitar sounding. It's heavy, it's really scooped, but it's got a high end as well. And it's got that real sort of wiry attack as well. So we'll just start here. We'll just start at the input. We'll wind that right up. This is about as extreme as I go with an EQ as well. Things start to just sound too quacky. It just doesn't sound right. And then for the mids, we'll just wind them back. I think we can have a fatter bottom end. We don't necessarily need to wind the gains to make things fatter. We'll just move the frequency along to more of that, like a usable high, low mid, high bass. Just the highs now, I think. It's a hollow, it's more of like a hollow sounding tone, but it's super aggressive. I'll bring that down. Just such a badass riff. I don't know why it wasn't on the album, you know. I guess the last one now just leaves us with the tone for Far Beyond Driven, and to me this album had the coolest tone. I really like it. It's really scooped, but it punches through. It was just a really unique tone, even for Dime. So I think the way that I see this tone, it's very similar to Vulgar, but just the top end's just wound back a little bit, and it's not so, the mids aren't so pushed in the front end. So we'll just bring the mids just down a little bit and just clean up this top end just to make it just a little bit it's like that. I think it's a smoother top end. It's not so cutting. That's cool. Need a little bit of ambiance. We still got time. I'll just quickly give this a go. So I guess there you go, there you have it. If you're still here watching, thanks so much. It's been an epic video, but you can really see how the 6-band in the front just works with the Master Effects EQ from hell. And I've never used a Furman PQ3 or PQ4, but I can just tell by the tone of this that transforms into Dimebag. Like that's an awesome pedal. That EQ, it's just got such a dramatic effect over the tone. It's an entire blanket. It's a showstopper, I think. So anyone looking for a good, decent dime bag tone, no matter how you're driving the front end or what you've got, you could substitute this for an overdrive, I suppose, and just tweak with the tone. But for the effects loop, definitely a must. I would be going with that every time. But that's just me. I love EQs. And all that said, thanks so much. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.